Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Cinema Savvy. It is myself, George, joined once more by Tate for another monthly stream because we're now in the month of November and it's time to start talking about everything we were watching back in October and maybe see where the chats go. But first of all, Tate, how are we doing today?
I'm doing okay. I've got a bit of a throat illness, so I'm hoping that my voice carries me through this. But I've watched a lot of films this month. It was a big month for films for me, so happy to talk about them.
Yeah, it is. It is one of them. I feel like I've seen a lot more than I thought I would, and it feels like there's not been many new releases, but actually there has been, and there's a lot of TV shows happening at the moment. It's been a pretty wild year for TV, if I'm being really honest. I think it's been a better year for TV than film so far, if I'm being really blunt. But it's been a very good year for film. If my reservation, just there's not been any big blockbusters or enough of them or enough quality ones. But I do get to talk about one delightful one in this. Everybody watching at home, please do comment with what you've been watching. And if you've got any questions for us, it's the monthly stream. It's kind of turned into not just talking about what we watched, but if there's like a big news thing, if there's something happening and people are curious, they want to know our thoughts on a piece of news, or we might end up segueing into it based off what we're watching, then that is something that we will talk about. So if you've got any questions, let us know if you're watching live. If you're not watching live, leave a comment. We'll reply to it tomorrow or something. So we will reply to those. We've got Martin in the comments. Lovely to see you, Martin, as always. So I said people do keep any comments going, but Tate, we've not really planned this.
As always.
Do you want to go first? Yeah, let's do that. I mean, I wasn't on last month because I watched a grand. I will tell you what films I watched in September of mine, but I watched 2 films in September.
Go for it. You go with your 2 films, and I'll go into.
Oh no, I'll do mine later because I know it's what actually links with what you've been watching.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, so I'm going to come straight out of the gates and say that this month has been dominated by one film franchise and one film franchise only, which has been every single Harry Potter film. And I'm not talking about the Fantastic Beasts films. I just went and watched all the Harry Potter films for various different reasons. You know, we have the hype at the moment around, our casting thing that we're thinking of doing or whatever's going on with that. We had our Mount Rushmore of Harry Potter characters as well. And also, even when I flicked on the TV the other day, as always, ITV2 is currently going back through the Harry Potter series. It seems like Harry Potter season is upon us. So it just felt right to go through the series again. I don't think I've been through the entire series since I've been on the channel. It's been that long. I'll watch the odd film. Yeah, I'll watch
9 years.
I know, right?
Oh, is it a proper rewatch? Sorry, like a proper rewatch.
Yeah, because I'll watch the odd film. So if it's on the TV, I think the last time I did it, I watched it from like the 5th film onwards because the 5th film was on TV and I didn't go back to the previous ones. And then previously I've just done like, I just want to watch the early years. So I just want to watch kind of 1 and 2 before it becomes a bit dark and brooding. But this is the first time since I think I've been on the channel where I've done a proper full rewatch. Every single film. I did it in about the space of 3 days. I really just trucked through it. And yeah, it's one of those franchises which, of course, we both grew up with. And it's one of those franchises that you can always go back to, and there is love there for every single film of the franchise. I don't think there's a single bad film in there. I feel like my opinion has changed over the years with different films going through it. So the first film feels almost more magical than all the others now, looking back on it. Whereas I think as I grew up, I thought the films got more magical as they went along. Looking back on it now, I'm like, no, that first film was precious. That first film really does engross you into the world and really does put you in the shoes of, a school kid learning that they're magic. I still think my favorite might be Half-Blood Prince because I'm dark and sadistic. I usually flick between that and Azkaban, but upon rewatch this time, I really got into Half-Blood Prince and really, really enjoyed that. I know it's not the favorite amongst most people.
I think it's the best book, and the issue with that is they had to cut out so much. And it's still a very good film. It's like what I said. I can't say it's like Star Wars because Star Wars, unfortunately, to me, did drop a clanger. But what franchise is it? Bond, maybe? I mean, I'm not saying there's bad Harry Potter films. There's bad spin-off films, but there's a bad Bond film. It's still very watchable and enjoyable, I think, off the top of my head. But Harry Potter's not like every different day you could have a different answer on any question. And
I agree with that.
I think certainly for us, we'll have memories of all of them. Whether at home, we grew up with those films. We're in the same year at school, so we were in We were in year 1 when Philosopher's Stone came out, and we were in year 10, starting 11-ish, when Deathly Hallows Part 2. So that was like our entire, pretty much, academia, which is wild. And it must be even more crazy for people that were maybe like 3-4 years above us that would have finished school education with Harry Potter, probably started it with it too, and a little bit older with the books maybe. So it is wild, but it's interesting about Half-Blood Prince because the film does get a lot of unfair slack, and I think that's very unfair on the film. And I think the biggest issues aren't the film's fault. There's no chemistry with Harry and Ginny. That's not the Half-Blood Prince.
That is the one scathing criticism of that entire film that I'd have.
And they cast those kids like 4 or 5 years before that book even came out. And things like that the show might be able to, I don't want to say correct because that's unfair. It's way too far away to think about, but it is little things like that. Their hands were tied. Like they didn't know Ginny was going to be that important.
I'll go ahead and say, is it really bad that the only chemistry that Daniel Radcliffe actually, or romantic chemistry I actually believe in the entire franchise, is that one coffee shop girl that he chats to for like 10 seconds? Is that really bad? Yeah. I know that he's an okay actor. I've seen him in other things, but maybe it was a bit more difficult because, you know, a young actor, you know, it's difficult, isn't it?
yeah, it's weird, but it must be a fun rewatch because I'll admit we've started. So we're going to the studio tour in January, me and my family. My parents have never been. My parents have never seen Past Azkaban.
Wow.
They took me and my sisters for 1, 2, and 3. For whatever reason, 4 and 5 we didn't see at the cinema. I know that much because I got them on DVD as soon as they came out. And then 6, I went by myself on the last day of school in not year 9, 2009. And then I went with my sisters for both Deathly Hallows. So my parents haven't seen past the 3rd film. And we wanted to book a day trip. We've managed to book it. We wanted to Hogwarts in the snow. It was basically sold out for this year. This is on the week, by the way. Start of September I'm now calling it like Harry Potter week. The return to Hogwarts is the marketing term, but they released all the 2025 tickets that week. And the day we went to get ours, they just announced the what they do for Halloween, where they do it like 6 p.m. to 12 p.m. Feast in the Great Hall, Death Eaters, all this really cool stuff. It was the same day we booked ours that came out. So we're doing Hogwarts in the Snow in January. So I'll talk about the one we've rewatched later. But we have got that planned to watch as a family between now and January, essentially. It should be fun. The excitement from this one comes more with the seeing of people who haven't seen past the 3rd one. And when I say they've seen the 3rd one, that would have been 20 years ago with it celebrating its 20th anniversary. Wow. So they're in for a wild surprise. I've not seen them since 2020. I think I did them in COVID with my sister. And then we did the studio tour back then because I hadn't done it since. They added loads of stuff. So yeah, Harry Potter. It's just been I feel like it's been the last few months. It's all been Harry Potter focused. I'm going to convention next week and I'm going to meet some of the casts. I've not done conventions for ages. I've got some Lego sets which aren't visible for Harry Potter. I'm doing some changes in the room. They won't be visible, to be fair. But it's like seasonal, but not seasonal. It's like every few years you'll go through them all. And as you said, the earlier ones do feel more special. That whether it's the innocence of the storyline, whether it's seeing these actors younger as kids, or the sets are different, the production's different. It's not the entity that Harry Potter is, but I don't think you can replicate those. Certainly the first 2, they feel like their own little double header. But here's a question, because this is one of my September films I watched. I watched the Harry Potter reunion because I hadn't seen it yet. And apparently it does count as a film, which is questionable because it's a documentary, but sort of not. It's an hour and a half. Did you watch it?
No.
I guarantee you, if you watch it now, you'll cry. If you've binged all 8, if you've just done all 8 films, which you have, if you go and watch this now, there's some very cringy bits. Like they have Emma Watson walking through the Hogwarts Express set at the studio tour, and they're like just like nodding their head at loads of like the end of Inception, but around the studio tour with all the old actors. But it's a really lovely documentary. Friends had a really good, speaking of anniversaries too, Friends had an amazing reunion in COVID. And obviously no one at that point, obviously that'd be the last time we really see the 6 together, ruined by James Corden being the host and James Corden being James Corden. But the Harry Potter one's really well done. They've got all the directors. They've got pretty much all the cast, younger and older ones, speaking about the people they've lost along the way as well. It's a really, really good documentary. And I did cry a bit because it ends with Robbie Coltrane speaking about how Harry Potter will be around, but he won't be. And obviously, no one knew at that point that he was seriously ill. So it's a really good documentary. And if anyone hasn't seen it, and I'll plug another documentary on Harry Potter, a bit different. This was very different. On Sky in the UK, HBO America, I think, about Daniel Radcliffe's stunt double that came out last year. The Boy Who Lived, I think it's called. Really eye-opening documentary for people that are into film, and is very, very not difficult viewing, but it's pretty impactful. And I really recommend that. And I think Daniel Radcliffe actually produced it with him, which is a really nice thing. But yeah, if anyone wants some Harry Potter documentaries, there's two to the list. But yeah, the reunion one, I hadn't seen it when it came out. I just don't know why I didn't see it at the time. But pretty much everyone's in it, which is really great. Like no one didn't turn up. I don't think J.K. Rowling didn't turn up, and when she does, it's like big bold archive footage from 2019. Like, yeah, we really can't be associated to anymore.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, that's what happens when you destroy your own franchise. And just also on the news this week, we've had sorry, last thing I said about Harry Potter. Eddie Redmayne and Jude Law have basically both confirmed Fantastic Beasts is dead, which we already know. But if anyone does know, if you want some even political news about Fantastic Beasts, when the Fantastic Beasts launched, you remember they rebranded Harry Potter to Wizarding World, and the Wizarding World.
Yeah, I've seen this news. Yeah.
I want to do the Voldemort meme, but I can't do the laugh. But it's like Wizarding World is dead. Yeah, it's apparently you go on wizardingworld.com. It now rebrands you to harrypotter.com, just like the old days as a kid when the internet was brand new. So it's safe to say that the Wizarding World is no more. R.I.P.
It didn't branding disaster.
It didn't outlive Spunk from Sony.
That's bad. That's really bad. Okay, so let's talk about some different films this month. This month was a spooky month because it was Halloween. I went and watched a bunch of horror films this month across different broad spectrums of what you consider to be horror films. So I started the month by watching Paranorman. I'm going to come back and talk about one of the films I also watched towards the start of the month because that is one that I need to talk about a bit more. I watched Crimson Peak, as Crimson Peak is my Crimson Peak of films, the film that I hated on first watch but actually appreciate on rewatch. Once again, thought it was fantastic as a gothic horror film. Very, very underrated. I went and watched 28 Days Later and The Shining. I watched those back to back, which is actually a really nice double bill. Leading up onto kind of our horror Mount Rushmore, wanted to solidify some picks and wanted to watch those two films. And also, I watched, can you call it a horror film? It's more like a thriller film. Woman of the Hour, new film from this year, Anna Kendrick directing. Fantastic film. Really enjoyed it. Really eerie vibes about it. I'd say it's more of a thriller than a horror, but it's kind of along the same themes of someone murdering people and, you know, then going on to a game show. Have you seen it yet at all? Or
I haven't seen it. My sister has. I've read about it. I've read that Anna Kendrick has donated her salary to like charities as well. And I read a little bit about. I saw a clip online. I saw a 2-minute clip on Twitter. Also, I'm going to slag off Netflix in a minute, but it was the scene at the airport where he clocks that he's got given a fake number. And now, if anyone's watching this out of context, this means nothing. If you've seen it, you will know that. For someone for me, there's no anything about I know about the film. But for anyone that hasn't seen it and saw that 2-minute clip, that's enough. That's a terrifying short film. But I did a bit of reading on the real life stuff because I'm always not curious. You know, like murder films have become this really big thing, or murder documentaries. It's not my forte, but people love them. My sister watched this Mendes Brothers one. Everyone's gone wild for, which is these two boys that killed their parents. But a lot of stuff's happened in the news, like decades on from that. But the Anna Kendrick one, I've heard she's directed really well too, like for a directorial debut.
It is really, really not just well directed, but well edited and well put together. A very well produced film. It flows really quickly. It's quite a short film. I want to say it's like 1 hour 40, and that runtime flies by. It's just really, really good, solid kind of performances all round, and has a good, strong kind of message about it. Has a very, very, very kind of a few twists which you wouldn't expect from a story that is kind of reasonably well known apparently in America, but. Yeah, no, enjoyed that. And then Smile as well. I will go and watch Smile 2 because it's been getting really good reviews. But I wanted to watch Smile 1 because I hadn't seen Smile 1 and it was okay. It was fine. kind of cool twist on horror films. You know, you can smile at people and that will creep them out now. But the main horror film that I wanted to talk about this month is a horror film that has haunted British TV all the way since 1984 when it first came out. Now, this is a TV movie, so it falls into the category of TV and movie in the sense that it was released on BBC back in the 80s, and it's only ever been shown 4 times since, because every single time they've reshown it, it's been shown with warnings of like, this is going to give you nightmares, do not watch, like viewer discretion advised, all of that. This film is Mick Jackson's Freds, which went back onto BBC4 and caused a lot of controversy once again because it was re-released onto TV as a film about kind of post-apocalyptic Britain and what it would be like in the days leading up to a war breaking out, an apocalyptic war, and then the war actually happening and people living with the fallout. It is a truly horrifying film. People put it in the same category as films like Come and See, of like films you watch once, you'll never watch it again, or Requiem for a Dream. It is scarring. The film has some horrific imagery. It has some low budget imagery as well, but some really striking, horrific imagery. You get attached to the characters very quickly. And it's not like it's high-end acting or anything like that, but the situation they're placed in and everything surrounding it and the effects for the time were actually quite good. It's haunting, is the best way of putting it. It is a film where every single scene of horror lingers for way longer than it's comfortable. I'd recommend it as a go watch it once. It's on BBC iPlayer. It will be on there for a year, I believe, as they've been doing that with all of their films they've been putting on there. But my God, it is, it sticks with you. I watched it at the start of the month. It's still stuck with me, just as a experience to go and watch this film of true kind of horror to an event where they make it feel so realistic that you feel like it might actually kind of happen at that stage. I was wondering if you'd ever heard of the film before or heard about it being re-released.
No, I haven't heard anything about it, if I'm honest. At first, like horror film British theatre, like I've got no idea. My horror knowledge isn't up there with others, if I'm honest. And when I think about like people getting mad in the 80s or 70s, I just think of The Exorcist, because that's the go-to story, isn't it, of everyone getting mad?
Yeah. But no, this I mean, this film, I hadn't have heard of it unless people started talking about it again and saying, "Oh, it's coming back onto British TV. You need to watch it as an experience." It's a pure kind of existential crisis playing out on screen. Half the film, it's split in half. Like the first half of the film is the kind of the horror around suspense building up to something bad happening. You know something bad's going to happen, and it's kind of lingering on those shots of those kind of news headlines and those different things, and you know the chaos in the streets of like shops being robbed because people know shit's about to go down and everything like that. And then the second half of the film is the fallout, and you keep on getting these kind of warning safety messages passing out onto the screen of like, you know, like after like day 5, people start to like die of the radiation poisoning, and you literally see people like coughing up blood and just like vomiting lungs and stuff like that, and faces being melted off from, you know, the radiation, and people having to work in the fields, people having to starve to death, the cold nuclear winters, all of that. It goes through everything. It is, yeah, horrifying film. I'd highly recommend it as a one-time watch for anyone. But I had to lighten the mood afterwards, so I watched Tag, which it's a fun film. It's a fun, dumb film. It's one of those films you can just throw on. And then I had to lighten the mood even more, so I watched 50 First Dates. I really needed a bit of, you know, cheering up after watching those. To round out the month, I rewatched the Lego Movie 2 because I hadn't seen it since it first released, and then I remembered, oh, this is why I didn't like this film. And it's because the musical numbers in Lego Movie 1 is great because there's only one of them, and there are more in the second film. And I love musicals, but they just don't fit to the theme in the film.
And now there's a Lego musical biopic on Pharrell.
I mean,
excited? Put it this way, it hasn't come out in the UK yet, but it's online. It's online already. The Americans did not take to it, so it's already online. But the UK hasn't even got it yet.
I
That's
believe
gonna
it'll
get
be
done well.
okay. I think it'll be in the similar vein to, you know, Robbie Williams bringing out his Better Man film with him as a monkey.
Apparently, that's good. I'm hearing
No
crazy
way.
stories about it. There was apparently, I don't know which, it might have been AFI in America. It's premiered. It premiered somewhere, and it went down incredibly well, which caught me off guard because I thought everyone was taking the piss. But it turns out they weren't taking the piss. Still won't watch it because I cannot stand Robbie Williams. I'm sorry.
No, that's
Even if
fair
it's a
enough.
monkey playing the lead.
Final film for the month, for the late great Maggie Smith, I ended up watching Gosford Park. I mean, I've been going through a bunch of murder mystery films. I like my murder mystery genre in general. I mean, I've been watching through Only Murders in the Building season 4. My parents have just started watching season 1. This is easily the most boring murder mystery film I've ever seen. And it's really sad because I wanted to watch a good Maggie Smith performance, and she's in the film. She's a good performer in the film, and it's got such a stacked cast. I mean, it has one of the most stacked casts of all time: Maggie Smith, Michael Gambon, Camilla Rutherford, Charles Dance, Tom Hollander. You've got what's his face, Stephen Fry, Clive Owen, Helen Mirren, Kelly MacDonald. It's just Emily Watson. It goes on. Derek Jacobi, Rich D. Grant, Jeremy Swift. I could not. Like, it's a good cast. That's a good British cast. It was so boring. It was so boring. It's like Downton Abbey, but like the slowest murder ever. Which I enjoyed Downton Abbey when it was on, but this is taking the piss. 137 minutes of my life, which sadly I won't get back, but at least I can say I watched the film and figured out the murder literally before anything actually happened, which is hilarious. But yeah, anyway, that rounds out my month. What a shame that I finished on that note. I guess the big takeaways are I watched a lot of Harry Potter. Go watch Freds if you're up for a horrible time. And then go watch Rebel Ridge, because I didn't talk about Rebel Ridge, and it's on Netflix and it's great. And thank you, Aaron, for the recommendation.
Apparently it's good. I've not seen it yet. Apparently it's very good.
It's not as good as Green Room. I prefer Green Room, but it's a decent film. So,
okay. Have you watched any TV bar Only Murders?
Was Rings of Power out? Did that finish this month?
I think so.
Agatha,
God, that was October.
Rings of Power and Agatha All Along. Agatha All Along is one of the best Disney Plus shows in recent years. Really fantastic from start to finish. Episodes got better as they went along. Thoroughly enjoyed it all the way through. Rings of Power was good as well. Got my dad hooked onto that this month, which is great. So, yeah, that's kind of been my month.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go for some of mine. So, I mean, I don't have to talk about. I'm going to go for my 2 Mighty September picks, because the first was the Harry Potter reunion, which, as I said, I do recommend it for people that haven't seen it, especially after a rewatch or before a rewatch. I watched the Batman for obvious reasons we'll talk about later on, and then Beetlejuice on the 28th, because it took me ages to see it, and I really enjoyed it. But let's get to October, because I did see a fair amount, and if I'm honest, a majority of it is actually films from this year that I'm catching up with, or it's films that I'm watching because they're out, etc., etc. So I kickstarted with Joker Folie à Deux.
Still haven't seen it.
I don't blame you. It's on course to be one of the biggest bombs of all time in the box office. It's getting like record drops every other week. I think it's out of cinemas already. It's online now. Warner Brothers have put it online inside 3 weeks of release. And I saw Todd Phillips come out for the first time this week saying that he's fed up with commercials before films at the cinema, and that's the reason people aren't going to the cinemas. Which to me sounds like someone's looking for an excuse to why no one watched Joker. That you can't say that after doing a bomb. Make $1 billion film, then say there's too many commercials at cinemas. Don't say it because your film's shit.
As someone who hasn't seen the film, would you say that the fact that he did a film like Tar in between, Todd
Phillips do Tar?
Yeah, he did Tar.
Todd Phillips.
I swear he did Tar. Hold on.
I'm going to Google this. If he did, I'm devastated. No, he didn't. It's his first
No,
one
it's
since
Todd
Joker.
Field. Sorry, wrong Todd.
Good.
That's
I
on
was
me.
so confused. I was like, oh my
Jesus.
god, I've got a lot of shit to take back.
Go
The,
on.
the
No.
issue the issue was it came to Joaquin Phoenix in a dream. That's the issue.
Yeah.
That it should have remained. And I know people are jumping on, people are taking a piss. I know that everything's kicking off with Joaquin with the whole leaving the film, which I agree, and I'm fully with the crews, and everyone wants to sue him for that. Coming out that he was left Split 2 weeks before Split started filming, and we got James McAvoy. I couldn't imagine anyone else doing Split, and I don't think Joaquin would be able to do Split. But yeah, I'm not. I could say something terrible, but I won't sit there accepting him having anxiety as an excuse to bail out and costing studios, not necessarily studios, him costing crews, actors, people, their time, their efforts. Irrespective of your personal life, I get it, and at times people need to drop out of productions. But getting cold feet a few days before and it coming out you've done it a lot of time is not fair. And then you're bagging 20 million for Joker 2. Use that to pay for everyone else. But yeah, Joker 2. The thing is, people are making out some of the worst ones ever made. It is not. People really need to open their eyes. I don't think it's good from a musical perspective. There are a lot better musicals. I don't think it's good from a courtroom drama perspective. There's a lot better courtroom dramas. I don't think it's a good film. I think it does know what it is. And within that, there's a very good short film they could have released, which is 20 minutes online. But there's a lot of stuff that's really perfect. Do you know the ending without doing spoilers?
I've heard snippets. I've avoided it so hard.
Okay. I was going to go in on something to do with Heath Ledger Joker, but I'm not going to. But yeah, I'll move on. We'll talk about it another time. But yeah, Joker, I watched it at the press screening. I didn't like it at the press screening. A lot of people felt the same. Some people loved it. Hey, good for them. But I think society will look back and mock that without sounding like a society meme. It took me 10 days to recover from Joker until I saw a film again. I watched Transformers 1, which was fucking sick. Saw it on a Saturday. The screen, there's like 15 people. I thought the trailer looked rubbish. I'm not like obsessively in love with Peter Cullen. Like, how dare you recast Peter Cullen? He is Optimus Prime. But Hemsworth is the only fault I really have with the film. I love Chris Hemsworth. He's a great guy. He's a fucking legend. But Optimus Prime, he is not. And at the end of the film, he basically has it's an origin for basically Optimus Prime and Megatron. And at the end of the film, it's a Peter Cullen impersonation. Like, his voice changes, and you get used to it. Then when he starts impersonating Peter Cullen, it's too much. Aside from that, the film is flawless. It's probably in my top 10 of the year. The Brian Tyree Henry plays Megatron, who is incredible in this. And I've got to say, Paramount really cocked up the marketing for what the film actually is. It was not some delightful uppy come together, Megatron, Optimus Prime, let's be best friends. It's not that. It's the best Transformers film. And I really recommend people see it. And I even stayed for the credit scene. And it was one of those stupid credit scenes that doesn't need to be a credit scene that you could have just played at the end. And everyone left the cinema, and the poor lady was there waiting to pick up the rubbish. And then when the credit scene happened, and I went down, I was like, "I'm so sorry." I'm sick and fed up of these films doing credit scenes this late. And she left. But it was a very cool scene about Decepticons, so that's why I stayed. So yeah, Transformers 1, recommend it for people. I'd really like to see it up for an Oscar next year for animated. I don't know if it will. Then a week off work, so I'm playing catch up. I had a big project. I was taking apart all my Lego sets. Normally, on my weeks off when I'm building them, I say I've watched like 20 films. This time, taking them apart, I got a fair amount done. I watched The Substance, finally. Great film.
I've seen The Substance, but sadly, it's in November, so I'm going to talk about it next month.
Okay, we'll talk about it next month properly. But yeah. Substance. If you haven't seen it, people... It's on Mubi now in the UK. Really recommend it. It is as wild as people are saying it is. That's all I'm going to say. And it's got a really good commentary on Hollywood, on media representation of women,
beauty standards.
Yeah, I mean the whole logic. That's what essentially people. It's saying Demi Moore, you're old and you're not good looking in this film, and she is. And the best tweet I saw was someone not getting that, saying they shouldn't have cast Demi Moore if they needed someone that didn't look good. And I'm like, no, that's the whole fucking point of the film, is that they're saying she isn't good looking. Really watch it. It's got all the most disgusting eating scenes since Return of the King as well, which sets me off. I followed up The Substance. I got a few Apple ones out of the way with my membership. I watched Wolves. the Brad Pitt, George Clooney one.
I completely forgot that come out. Yeah.
Yeah, 200. Apparently, that cost $200 million. To me, that's a daylight robbery. That's money laundering. It was pathetically average, and it's a real shame that these two got their little reunion in a film like that. And they took it away from Apple, took it off a cinema release, which Apple don't normally do. But I can see why. No one cared for this. And there's talk of a sequel. I hope not. And then followed up Wolves with Fly Me to the Moon, which is the Channing Tatum, Scarlett Johansson film from recently that you would think is a parody. Like, when you watch a film and there's a film within a film and it's like a piss take parody.
Yeah.
The marketing looks like that. It's not. It's a weird rom-com, fictional rom-com set in the 60s during the space race, where NASA basically hires a publicist to complete their funding to get the country on their side to do the moon landing. Obviously, I'm not going into this for scientific accuracy because it goes into the conspiracy theory side of things. They literally basically do the moon landings on a soundstage just in case the main project doesn't work and they've got to beat the Russians. It's not trying to be real though, but it's still. It lost me at that point because I'm like, this is getting too ridiculous now. It's already ridiculous. It's too ridiculous. But yeah, I don't recommend that. Apple on a bad run. But I then followed that up with The Wild Robot because it premiered. We didn't do London Film Festival this year. If anyone's curious about that, pretty much every film, bar two, is out here by the end of November. That's it. Wild Robot came out and was released here whilst London Film Festival was still going on. It just got a premiere. Wild Robot is an exceptional film. It's getting a sequel. I didn't know much about it heading into it. I went in really cold. Imagine like the Iron Giant meets global warming. That's like my tagline for it. There's a really good voice cast. It's got an incredible story. The animation's really unique. It's almost like a merge of not 3D and 2D animation, but it feels like a 2D animated film that's been made in modern animation, but it's not 2D animated. It's very well done. It's done by DreamWorks.
They've been on fire recently, to be fair. DreamWorks. Yeah,
and it's the director who did the How to Train Your Dragon films. So it's got a good stack behind it, and it was a really good film. Lupita Nyong'o's amazing in the lead. Pedro Pascal's in it. Mark Hamill's in it. I didn't even know it's him until after the film. But Matt Berry turns up, and obviously you know it's him straight away. He plays a beaver, and it's just perfect. The moment you hear his voice, like, okay, like we're sold. Matt Berry, you can do anything. So this is going to head on to a segue, and I'm going to bring up Martin's comment. I finished the latest Slow Horses season, which was excellent as usual, and this is probably the best season. Now, I haven't started Slow Horses yet. When I say it's been on my list to do, this is the forefront. This is when I've caught up to exactly what I want to watch, what I need to watch, what's being out now, what isn't. I'm going to destroy the 4 seasons because I am now on a Gary Oldman hype train. So for anyone curious, he's always been like my top 5 actors of all time. He's probably my favorite British actor, if I'm being really honest. Comes from the working class background. His sister's Big Murphy Stenders, which must always be brought up in conversation. Even the one film he directed was incredible. Semi-autobiographical about growing up in like the county estates of London, about like domestic abuse, stuff like that. Really, really, really good film. Nil by Mouth, it's called, for anyone curious. And BAFTA did a big thing a couple of years ago for the remaster. So Gary Oldman's on fire with Slow Horses. They've wrapped season 5. Season 4's just released and finished. Season 5 is wrapped. They're already filming season 6. And I think it's based off a book series. One of my friends working on it, I think he said there's either 7 or 9 books. So they're like flying through this. But the quality apparently from day one has been up there. Some of the names that have appeared in the show, which I've not seen yet, you've got the likes of like Hugo Weaving turning up. And these aren't like guest roles. These are people they're bringing in for a season at a time. So the stage actors, they're British actors. Jack Lowden, I think, is
he's quite a major character. I was going to say I've seen the first 2 series, and then I don't know why I didn't watch series 3. Maybe I was caught up with other TV shows at the time.
Probably wasn't out. They've done 4 seasons in like 18 months. Like we talk about how bad productions are these days with the 2 years. These guys are cracking out. There's no tomorrow.
I'll tell you now, I'm still on kind of, the text replies and like casting calls for things. There are so many I get for Slow Horses.
Yep.
Like so many.
They're filming a lot, and they're on top of the schedules, and Apple are very, very good with them for getting those seasons out. So the reason I'm going to talk about this, because I haven't seen So Horses yet, is because I woke up and the old breaking news on Twitter, a black and white image of Gary Oldman. It's breaking news, Gary Oldman. I was like, no. And it was Gary Oldman's returning to stage, and he'll be doing his first piece of theatre since 1987 up in York, which I've never been to. But Gary Oldman is doing stage in the UK, and it is a one-man show of a famous play. He's directing himself in as well as starring in, and it's going to be for 1 month from April to May. And that sent me through the roof because I don't do theatre a lot. And my logic of theatre has always been, if there is an actor I would love to see perform live, that's the selling point. It's not the play, it's not the tradition, it's not the history or whatever. It's I want to see this actor play. The closest I came recently was to Ralph Fiennes in Macbeth. But I don't know if I can face Macbeth because it's just too much PTSD from school. But that's where I am. It depends on the actor in the play. So when the tickets go on sale, I'm going to be all over that because Gary Oldman, as I said, he's one of my favourite actors. And all this announcement, the Slow Horses hype, the Harry Potter hype that's also happening behind the scenes, I was like, you know what? Now's a better time than any to tick off probably one of the last two big Gary Oldman films I've not seen. Three. But one of the last big three. I saw Sid and Nancy for the first time. If anyone's not familiar, it's obviously about Sid Vicious from Sex Pistols, and obviously his partner Nancy. Didn't enjoy the film particularly much, but it's a very good performance, and it's 1985, so it's really like young Gary Oldman at this point in time. And I'm still taking apart the Lego sets when I'm watching these, by the way. So my sister's like, she loves Sid and Nancy the film, so she'd always spoke about it, and I never got around to it. I did a triple bill that day of Gary Oldman films. The second one I did is one of my all-time favorite films, which is Leon the Professional. One of the most unhinged, incredible performances by Gary Oldman, Norman Stansfield, the villain. If you haven't seen it, please do. It's just, yeah, you can't. I could watch that film so many times. I know the Luc Besson stuff's very dodgy, and he's a creep. But it's even great seeing Natalie Portman like at the beginning of her career, knowing she's going to go on to have the career she does. But Gary Oldman's great. Jean Reno's great. It's a really good film. I then followed up with a film I've only ever seen once before, Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, which I feel like we've spoke about on here recently. Like the Avengers Endgame of like male British actors in the early 2010s, like Benedict Cumberbatch is the young and up and coming actor at that point in time, whereas now he's been like I think Sherlock would have just had its 2 seasons. 2011 it came out, or 2010, so I think it's like early days of Sherlock. He's not the Benedict Cumberbatch of today, but he's still phenomenal. I want to say it came out in 09. I could be wrong, but I feel like Sherlock was like 09, 010.
Started in 2010.
2010, fucking hell. So, you know, Tom Hardy's in it. He's also one of the younger up-and-coming actors.
Yeah.
And then you've got your John Hurt, your Gary Oldmans. It's Kieran Hines, Toby Steve. It's a great cast. It's a really good cast. It's a phenomenal film. The first ever time I saw it, I hated it. This is 2010 because I was an immature 14-year-old that thought it was going to be basically Gary Oldman doing James Bond, which it clearly fucking isn't. Really good film, so do recommend that. And then the film I bought that I want to see, awkward timing, so it's not so Megalopolis. I've got Bram Stoker's Dracula to watch this month. If I see that in Air Force One, in my head, I think I've seen all the Gary Oldman films. But I've seen so many clips from them all. It's fine. But I'm on a Gary Oldman hype. And Slow Horses is next. Once I finish Penguin, I'm going to start, because it's 4 seasons and 6 episodes. It's quite watchable. It's going to take a bit of time, not too long, but I really do want to watch it because I've heard phenomenal things about Slow Horses from start through to end. So, yeah, that's the Gary Oldman hype. I then saw The Apprentice the day after, which was very good. The Sebastian Stan one, the Donald Trump film. Obviously, we've got the election this week. Very interesting time. Sebastian Stan's great. The best person in it. I almost called him Kendall Roy. Obviously, not Kendall Roy. And but they might as well. Jeremy Strong is superb in it. He's Trump's lawyer, Roy Cohn. Very good film. Do recommend it. Don't care about your politics in the aspect of whether you like him, hate him. I mean, I personally hate him. I don't care for that. But what I'm saying is, from a film standpoint, it is worth watching. But I guess people that like him would want to hide away from a film that sort of correctly exposes things through, because some of this is from the documents from the divorce. So it's not just conjured up out of thin air. But hopefully America doesn't completely lose their heads this week. So The Apprentice. And then I had an inkling to watch The Death of Stalin, which I've not seen for a while. Genuinely not linked to the Donald Trump film. This was a few days
Death of
after.
Stalin is, and
So good. So
for a film that hasn't been out for too long, is it too early to call it an all-time classic? Because it's a film
No,
that
it
I
is.
would happily go back to at any point.
I think if you show this to anyone in the world, not with a sense of humor, I don't want to beat up myself and say you've got to be smart like Death of Stalin, but if you can just say it's a comedy, it's a satire comedy about the death of Stalin, but it's essentially British cast with a few Americans using regional accents. If the writing was shit, the film would be a disaster. But it's Armando Iannucci. I think he's just got a new series out actually on HBO. I could be wrong, but I'd seen it a few times and I loved it each time I've seen it, and it was still very funny now. The whole thing's very, very funny.
There are scenes that you can just pick out from that film, which are fantastic. But for me, Jason Isaacs, even the gif of the intro of shrugging off the jacket with all the medals,
the Yorkshire accent,
yeah,
the Yorkshire
look on
accent
your
sells
face.
it.
You know that entire scene is just they all know what's going on. They're all in on the joke, and that helps a lot when you've got a cast that are all on the same page and know exactly what they want from the film. I mean, yeah, I've seen it like 5-6 times already in the few years that it's been out. It's brilliant.
I recommend it. People haven't seen it. It's a satire is thrown around too much these days as a genre, but that's a real satire. Some people like say something edgy, and to defend themselves, say it's satire, but it's not. It's just a shit statement. But this is a phenomenal film, and yeah, it's amazing. So, followed Death of Stalin. A few days later, I mentioned family watching Harry Potter. We've done the Philosopher's Stone, bit of family aggro that not everyone was in the room to watch it, so some people have to rewatch it. So, haven't got Chamber of Secrets yet, but I did put Gilderoy Lockhart as a thumbnail for obvious reasons. But Philosopher's Stone, yeah, we've got 8 to watch by mid-January. It should be absolutely fine. I then unfortunately watched Venom: The Last Dance. Yeah, let's move on. Music by John Williams, the new documentary on Disney Plus. Really good, really recommend it. It's a documentary on John Williams. It's not going to be too edgy. It's not going to not be about music. It's exactly as you'd expect a documentary on John Williams. That's all I can really say. There's no exposés. There's no terrible private life stuff, is there? There's no look at what he did, look at who he's done this to. There's no aggro. There's no drama. It's got a lot about his early days I didn't know about, his work in the military, family, people he's lost, as you'd expect from a documentary. But again, I called him, I think, enigmatic in the review because I didn't really know a lot about him. No one ever really talks about him. They talk about his music and how great he is at composing. So it is as you'd expect it to be, but there's nothing wrong with that. Whether people would want it to be drawn out longer because you miss out on some stuff, like it talks about the military for about 5-10 minutes and how after when Saving Private Ryan came out, the most requested song, I think, for military events or funerals, I can't remember the right terms, for the last like 2 decades has been I think it's a song for a hymn for the fallen from the end of the film. Apparently in America, that's like the most requested military song, which I thought was really interesting to hear about that and how his music has had that effect upon that army, because it's not a piece of propaganda. It's a piece written for a film, for a final scene of someone passing and being a gravestone. So it's a really good documentary. Even Star Wars side of things, they've got moments where it hasn't worked for him, where, for example, they played the first ever rendition of Binary Sunset. George Lucas says this doesn't work. John Williams came back the next day and then had the real Binary Sunset that we all know and love. So it speaks about his relationship with directors that we didn't really know he had, because you think John Williams just went and did it all perfect first time. But Lucas was saying that many composers he'd worked with would be like, no, I'm not changing my music. It's in here, or you're just not going to get it. So that was interesting. And I feel like I have something more to add to that, but the Harry Potter thing based on what we're talking about. So one of the big enigmas was always why did he not come back after Prisoner of Azkaban? So it doesn't really go into it in this, but what I found fascinating was John Williams said he doesn't enjoy scoring sequels, which you would think, he's done 9 Star Wars films, 5 Indiana Jones, 2 Jurassic Parks, and he then speaks about it that he takes ownership over certain films, and the only sequels he ever did were the ones that he didn't want another composer to come on board for. Star Wars, Indiana Jones. It then cuts to Harry Potter and puts the first 3 posters up. And then they speak about it. They don't go into it too much, but essentially he had to let Harry Potter go. He didn't want to, but for whatever reason, he was unable to come back for the Goblet of Fire, and that's the last this film speaks of it. So I then went on Reddit. I know Reddit's not the best, but I did a bit of digging. Apparently, the reason for this is because in 2005, he did 4 films, all of which were his George Lucas, 2 Spielbergs. Basically, he was fully booked, and they believed there was no way he could have ever done Goblet of Fire. So they had to get a new composer for Goblet of Fire, and then just at that point onwards, they just switched the composers for each film. So again, there's not much politics of was he meant to come back? He was meant to come back for Deathly Hallows. I don't know if it was both parts or just part 2, although Alexandre Desplat did a phenomenal score in them 2 films. Apparently, the final cut of the film, or the cut they wanted him to score with, was not ready for him to come back and do the finale. So it was really interesting. Only because we were talking about Harry Potter earlier, that's always been one of the enigmas. Like, one of my biggest criticisms of the Harry Potter films is there's no Voldemort theme. Had John Williams had done the Goblet of Fire, even though we got a bangers with the Hogwarts March, which is a meme now these days, one of the biggest what ifs with Harry Potter was, what if John Williams did all of them?
What if there was a Voldemort's theme? Oof.
But do you see where I'm coming? And I know we're going to do the series soon with the casting, but I'm sat there like, and I know we've said what composer would we want, but I am there saying, in the same way Game of Thrones has done it with House Dragon 2, the same way Succession's done it, the same way Mandalorian. I know Ludwig didn't do season 3, but get a composer to lock in for all the seasons, because to me it's about the consistency. And I know it's really selfish and silly and childish. I just would love to see one composer's vision, ironically audible, but from 1 through to 8, because I do think. So I've been listening to the Prison House score a lot, and you get songs. The scene on the bridge with Lupin and Harry, and it's like I'm shit of instruments. Is it like a harmonica type thing, like wind instruments? I'm like, you wouldn't expect John Williams to do it, but he went it and made it perfect for that. And I feel that he could have done so much more with the other films. Again, it didn't happen. That's fine, but that's been one of my big what ifs following that documentary, because he obviously did want to do them, but for reasons couldn't. Which is also understandable, because even in 2005, the man's 73.
Yeah.
And he was doing 4 film scores that year. It was War of the Worlds, Munich, Revenge of the Sith, and something else, which I've forgotten. So they don't really go into that. Which,
honestly, all of them are really phenomenal scores. Like, you know.
And it's for Lucas and Spielberg, those 3 too. So it's understandable. It's a really good documentary. As I said, it's safe by the numbers, but it's very much well worth watching. And then I watched it the following day. That's one I saw for October. Superman, the Christopher Reeve story. One of the most devastating films I've seen. I know last year I spoke about The Boy Who Lives, and I spoke about earlier the Harry Potter stunt double. But I've not seen the Superman films. I know who Christopher Reeve is. I know about the accident. I knew nothing else at all. And the film, I said like 80% of it's the accident and onwards, which is really good, because that's what's important to this story, as well as the early life stuff. But I recommend it for anybody, and I would put some bets down. I don't know if I need to bet, it sounds horrible, but best documentary at the Oscars, I'd be shell-shocked if it isn't this. It's a really enlightening documentary that I think people should be encouraged to watch, especially outside of film. Turns out the impact that he has had on paralysis and disability worldwide is like profound. I don't know, there were like bills passed in his name under the Obama registration. His family were at the forefront and helping stem cell research. It was a really, really good watch, powerful watch. So I do recommend that for people. That's the last film I watched this month. I've seen one for November already. TV wise, I've seen technically it's November. I've started Penguin. I feel like, as you said, Lord of the Rings came out, didn't there? I feel like there's been another show I've watched maybe, but I'm trying to hold off on shows until I can do Slow Horses.
I was going to say, are you going to get onto Agatha at any point? I would recommend it.
I wanted to. I heard from a lot of people it genuinely got really good. Apparently it started well, but it literally kept getting better every episode. I do want to see it. I've cancelled Disney Plus. Just because they're trying to make me pay £12 a month now. Because my annual £70 pass ran out. They're like, now it's £125. I was like, no, it's not. I'm not paying that. So I'm currently doing Apple stuff, and I think I'll reactivate Disney Plus in December for Skeleton Crew. So I will see Agatha. It is on my list. I think I'm going to finish Penguin. The finale is next Sunday. Then I'm going to nail Slow Horses in between Penguin and Skeleton Crew. And then if I've got time, I'll do Agatha. It's 8 episodes, isn't it? No, 9. It's 9 episodes. So yeah, I will see it. But that's been my October. It's been busier than normal. There's not been, I mean, for even filmers, there's not been many big breaking news stories. Like, there's not been dramas. There's not been, I don't know. I feel like the next few days is going to be feral. It seems like half the celebrities are campaigning for the politician they want to be in charge of America. So that's sort of where the industry sits. But once again, it's been Harry Potter, and sorry, Tate, but we're probably going to bring up next month if we end up watching more.
That's okay. We'll talk more Harry Potter next
month.
And
we've got the casting videos.
We do. I'm looking forward to those.
Yeah, there's going to be... And listen, and kind of away from this, like, all of this is stemming from this Harry Potter TV series. Like,
yeah.
The first conversation I had was on a friend on a train in August. Not about casting. That was just about, is this happening next year or not? And then that week, there just happened to be an official announcement. And that week then happened to be a return to Hogwarts. And then everything has gone up. Even the Wizarding World announcement, the death of Wizarding World. It's all going in a certain trajectory for a certain Boy Who Lived franchise to not make a return, but kind of what we said last time, right? That I think it's like a sleeping giant. The Hogwarts Legacy was the biggest selling game last year, the most played game of last year, minutes-wise. The talk of a sequel. I know the Fantastic Beasts films didn't work out for various different reasons. Primarily with the writing is where I will always go to for that. But if Fantastic Beasts films had been good, we wouldn't be talking about a Harry Potter HBO show. We'd be talking about, oh, look, they're on the 4th or 5th film now. But here we are going back to square one. However, the thing I'm genuinely looking forward to most is seeing who's going to play who. Like, because now the actors have the start, middle, and end of the series. They know exactly who they're signing on for. They know what their role is. I was with a friend today. They met Mary Margaux at a convention. And they're, oh, yeah, she didn't care for Harry Potter. She says she has no memory of film. It's like, well, that is someone that was in 2 films, basically part 2 of Deathly Hallows, like a scene, let's be honest, but pretty much basically in a scene of Chamber of Secrets. Back in 2001, when that film was being shot, she wasn't going to know it was like an 8 film project. The books hadn't come out. No one would know she's going to be in it. And I think now, when for whatever work they're doing, there is going to have to be the conversation of, this is your character, and you're going to be available. What they do, like retainer fees and stuff like that. So
yeah, they sign. It's not signing a contract for that many films. It's more of kind of like your availability to be on the project, kind of thing.
Like 10 years, pretty much as well. For some of the big ones, it's going to be
buy yourself out if you don't want the role anymore, kind of thing.
I think, as I said, if they nail the casting, fine. But as you said earlier, right, the early films are the most magical. I really do like the later ones. I just hope that the consistency, the look, the design, everything isn't just, let's take Deathly Hallows Part 2 and make that the aesthetic for 8 films. Let's not take the Philosopher's Stone and make it the aesthetic for 8 films. That wouldn't work either. But if they can, again, find something, stick with the consistency, nail it from start through to end, great. But that's not my job, that's theirs. I'm sure they'll have, I mean, they got one of the writers from Succession, so that's genuinely one of the biggest selling points to me, if I'm honest, too.
I just can't wait for them to direct it like an episode of Succession.
Well, when they tried Dumbledore's death, and it's basically Logan Roy's death. And it's just like them frantic. I mean, they didn't do the funeral. We could get a funeral. We could get the funeral episode of Dumbledore, but like everyone ever turned up. The film, now we couldn't afford them for that. I'm sorry. But yeah, I don't have much more to add. I mean, I'm not going to talk about games, but I am playing God of War, and everyone compares that to a film. It's not The Last of Us. No. It's good. It's fine. I think it's a bit overrated. But a few comments on Martin. Gary Oldman was friends with Bowie. How cool is that? Yes. Was in the music video as well. Jason Isaacs is brilliant in Death of Stalin. And he's had great things about Penguin. Colin Farrell ran the Dublin City Marathon Street and raised $1 million for charity. Yes. Did you see this video? It's lovely. There is a charity he's specifically raising money for, and it's a very rare disease. And the girl in the video with him, either, I don't want to get this wrong, she's in a wheelbarrow or she's in a wheelchair. That's not me being disrespectful, but he ran the marathon carrying her in this device. That's what I'm saying. It's a wheelbarrow, wheelchair. And the whole logic was he wanted to not only raise money for the charity, but to bring attention to it visibly. So he did a marathon with somebody like carrying someone else, essentially. I fucking love Colin Farrell. I know the Penguin show's great, but if anyone wants to, Martin, if you want a really good interview with him, Hot Ones from last year, it's basically him talking about philosophy for 30 minutes. And he's a very, very intelligent actor that I implore people to see interviews from. So I really don't have more to add. Do you?
Not really. The only other thing, just because you mentioned Hot Ones, that's kind of sparked up this month was, did you hear about the whole chicken shop dates Andrew Garfield thing?
Andrew Garfield? I was meant to bring him up earlier. I saw his Elmo clip, which is reducing people to tears.
Yeah.
We live in times out here in January, isn't it? So it's come out in the States. He took a cardboard cut of Florence Pugh to London Film Festival, which was great. I've got a lot of time for him. I think he's a very good actor. And like a Colin Farrell type, it seems like all of you to chat to them in the street, but there's a bit more going on in his head than a lot of other people's. And his interviews are very good. I really like him. God, I don't want to end on a downer. It's him talking about his mom, isn't it, the Elmo clip? But anything else?
The chicken shop dates thing was hilarious to the fact that
they've been building up for like a year or two.
They've known each other for like 2 or 3 years. And I watched Chicken Shop Dates. I've been watching that for a while on YouTube. That's the first one that's actually looked and felt like them going on an actual date and not like a satirical kind of, interesting in that sense.
He plays the game though, like he's done his homework on it because he knows her mannerisms and how she plays it, and he was sort of firing back.
Yeah, and now people are debating whether it was real or not, which is hilarious. But we don't really get to talk about YouTube too much, unless it's like controversial,
Mr. Beast. I did see a dreadful video of a YouTuber. There's a YouTuber that what's his name? Is it Critical Moisture or something like that? His name on YouTube is like Penguins. Yeah. So I've not discovered recently. I've seen a few of his videos, but he did Memulous is another one. There's a dreadful American YouTuber that finds homeless people and has them fight each other, and he'll give them like a meal, or he'll have them fight. He called it Homeless Hunger Games to give someone a meal out, and he had like 5 people fighting and stuff. They didn't kill each other, but someone did an expose on this twat YouTuber. Not Memeless. The Memeless was doing the video on the twat YouTuber. That's what I need to clarify. But he had them do a boxing match. The bio was winner gets a home, but he just put them in a budget hotel for a week. But he still had them fight each other to do it.
Jesus.
YouTube's fucked up. Sorry to put on
YouTube
a downer.
A lot of people have been.
But there's a lot of good on YouTube. There's a lot of good on YouTube. Yeah, Hot Ones is one of them. Colin Farrell's one of them. I do like Chicken Shop Dates when I've seen it. I'm not as into it as other ones. But Andrew Garfield felt like the end game, where it's like that's naturally been building for a long time, hasn't it? I don't really watch other interview ones these days.
To be fair, most of the time when I watch those kind of styles of YouTube, most of my YouTube's kind of old school YouTube. So either
I did see
or Chris MD and stuff like that. But
some people are going to are you aware of the Rizzler? Without getting into the Costco guys, do you know about the Costco guys?
No,
I'm not going to bore you with it, right? But
yeah,
they went on Jimmy Fallon this week, and I don't like Jimmy Fallon. I think he's a really narcissistic host. Jimmy Kimmel's the better of the Jimmys. Jimmy Fallon doesn't like these people on his show, and he starts cutting them off. But he's doing awkward laughing, and it's very interesting. But there's a character or kid called the Rizzler. This is not a joke. But he's sat in a chair like Yoda out of Star Wars, like he doesn't fit on the chair, and the fucking Yoda photoshops everywhere. It's very funny, but they're now all turning on Jimmy Fallon. But yeah, if anyone's ever bored, I didn't tell you this, it's the Costco guys. It just epitomizes what essentially TikTok apparently is. Well, here we go. Nice bit of news though. Colin ran the last bit of the race, pushing the woman in the wheelchair. He's brilliant, and Deborah Ireland is a fantastic charity. Well, thank you for confirming that's the charity name as well, because then that means people can see it as well. But love Colin Farrell, absolute legend. But that's anything else, or is that a nice outro?
I think that's a nice outro. I think that's a good point to finish on for this month.
Lovely. So everybody at home, thank you for watching. Do comment with what you've been watching this month. We've got a lot more reviews coming out. Tomorrow morning at 9 a.m, Paddington in Peru review will be up. Very strict. Haven't had to sign NDA for a review, which I've not done for a very long time. So that's out in the UK on Friday. America, January. We get it first. Great. Unlike Wallace and Gromit, thank you for fucking us over. and letting the Americans have Wallace and Gromit before England. I will get patriotic about Wallace and Gromit. But there'll be a lot more reviews, so do stick around and get us on social medias, linktree.com/cinemasobi. But that will do it for today. So once again, thank you all for watching, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care.